Hi, welcome to the Delaware Valley Workshop. Today's project is going to be to restore this cutting board. My family lore says that this used to be my grandfather's, who handed it down to my dad, who gave it to me after he passed away. Now it seems to be made out of oak, and it's a fairly good size, but it has this gigantic split down the middle, right here, where the glue that they used failed, because if you look at the end grain, you can see it's a bunch of oak strips glued back together. So today I'm going to take off the pads right here, run it through my saw to turn it into two pieces, joint it, plane it, and then reattach it, and hopefully I'll have a better cutting board than I started out with. Three-quarters. So, it looks like they embedded bolts in my cutting board, and there's no way to get them out. I took a metal detector and ran it along the whole board where I think the threaded rods are, and it beeped all the way through. So, I need to be able to joint these two pieces and then glue them together to create a seamless piece so they can fix the headboard. And since the metal screws will nick my planer blades and my joiner blades, the only solution I can come up with is to take this and glue an extra piece of oak the same width and thickness of the cutting board, and then I'll have enough to plane and thickness so that I can glue the two pieces together and not have to worry about the bolts. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll put these aside for now, and I'll grab a piece of red oak from my bin here. Looks like it will do. It's long enough. Let's see here. Yeah, it's plenty long. Okay. So I'll set up the table saw to cut a 1-inch wide by 3/4 inch thick strip, and I'll cut two of them. Okay, I'm going to set my fence to a little bit over 1 inch wide. Give me 1 1/16. Okay, now let's just check our length. It is 23 and 7/8. 23 and 7/8. I need 2 strips. Okay, so I'm going to measure the board. The length of the board is roughly 23 and 7/8. So I'm going to come over to my miter saw and I'm going to cut these 2 pieces to that width. Okay, set my top block. Tape. So we're going to make it just a slightly bigger. You can always take some off, you just can't add. That down. That down. Okay. Put this up. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a line centering on these bolts that are in the wood. So that I can cut out the recesses for the pieces that I'm going to add, because I can't grind the bolts down without affecting the joint itself, and I'm trying to keep it as straight as possible, so I glue my oak pieces onto the board like so. And like so. Then these 2 edges can now be jointed and glued up and make a nice line. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I've installed a plug cutter into my drill, and my idea is to center 3 holes that are big enough so that the protruding screw slips into it, letting the wood go right up against the wood without interference. Sorry about the previous iPhone footage. My Canon lost the footage of me gluing up the oak to the cutting board. So I had one shot that I used for a short of the panels being glued up. So that's why you got an iPhone shot there. So I just took the boards out of the clamps and I'm going to put them together, and hopefully they'll be close enough to get jointed, and then I can run them through the planer and then glue them back together. No, that does not look too bad at all. I'll take the thicker piece because I allowed myself some extra material to join off. I'll run that through the jointer, and hopefully I can make that line disappear, and we can go move on to our next.
Note to self, make sure you lock all the wheels on a mobile base, nitwit. After joining the two sides, the joint line virtually disappears. Since the cutting board is wider than my planer, I run the two halves separately until they both have the same thickness. And finally, we can glue up the two halves of the cutting board. I begin by setting up the halves in the clamps, and then place some water-resistant glue on both edges. I set them down into the clamps and slightly applying a little bit of pressure to keep them together. I then take my F clamps and clamp them to the sides to level out the edges to keep the two halves as even as possible. Then I tighten the clamps completely and let the cutting board sit for a couple hours for the glue to dry. The glue has dried for a couple hours and I am removing the clamps from the assembly. Upon inspection, there are some tiny gaps I want to remove. So I take some glue and some oak sawdust and mix them up as a gap filler and apply them to the cutting board wherever I want to hide a gap. Ding 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 ding. It's time now for everyone's favorite job, sanding. I'll rush right through this clip so you don't have to watch me sand for 20 minutes. It's time now to finish up. I replace the pads on the underside of the cutting board to keep it from sliding on the kitchen counter. I then take a damp paper towel and I wipe it down several times to get all the dust off the surface. Finally, I apply some walrus cutting board oil to finish it off. And here it is, the cutting board all oiled up and looking pretty. And here it is installed on the countertop. I didn't like the square edges, so I ended up rounding them all over with my router table. See you next time on the Delaware Valley Workshop.